Hey BookTube, this is my February wrap-up.
I got my ticket for the long way round.
17 books in February, and the bulk of those were paranormal romance or sci-fi or fantasy on some level, so those are what I'm going to tell you about. Starting with Branded by Abby Ketner and Missy Kalacicki, and Jorjeana Marie narrated this on audio. This is a story about a world, a dystopian world, where the law is based on the 7 deadly sins. If you get accused of one of these sins, then you get shipped off to a prison, kind of a town. And as soon as you go in, they tattoo your neck with a color that signifies the sin that you've committed. Main character gets accused, of course unjustly, and she gets shipped off to this place. It's a good story. You know, obviously they have to overthrow the government and let everybody out of the town, the prison town. But the thing that struck me about this book is that the main character is always saying that she's nauseous. Everything makes her nauseous. And it's so funny because it comes up so many times. And it got really annoying until the love interest commented. She says something about, I feel okay, but I'm nauseous. And he says, yeah, you get like that a lot, don't you? It was kind of funny. It was like the authors realized that this was happening all the time. So yeah, inside joke, but a good book. I wouldn't say it was above average. It wasn't fantastic, but I gave it kind of the low end of 4 stars. Good collaboration between those 2 authors. Next up is Unremembered by Jessica Brody. I actually have a print copy of this, but I listened to it on audio as narrated by Whelan. Whelan, I'm not always a fan of, but in this case, she did a great job. This is a story that's really well done. It's about a girl who wakes up in the water after a plane crash, and she's the only survivor of this plane crash. It's a great story. It goes a direction that I didn't expect for it to go. And I'm not going to tell you really anything about it because that's the beauty of it. She has no memory, and so the story is all about what she remembers and the way she begins to remember it. So I really like this series, I have to say, and I gave this one 4 stars. Under Different Stars, this is by Amy A. Bartol, and it is a self-published book that I got last summer when I was at a convention. I actually met Amy, and she signed the book, she signed the bookmark, and the whole thing. Well, because it's self-published, I kind of put it off on my shelf and thought, you know, those things are so hit and miss. It sounds like a good premise. It's got a beautiful cover. So, you know, okay, whatever. And then I saw that it was available on Whispersync, narrated by Kate Rudd. Well, I love Kate Rudd. She is a really, really talented voice actor. So I grabbed it up and I started listening. And I am so glad I did. This book is so good. It's all about a girl who's from, she's born here and she lives in Chicago. She's an orphan. She encounters some guys on the train one night going home from work, and they believe that she's somebody else from another world and they want to take her there. So actually they kidnap her and they do take her there. The best part about this book are the characters, and I loved the character of the love interest. He is a kind of a major in the army, and he's the one in charge, and then he's got like 3 soldiers in his little group with him. The main character's name is Kricket, and when she's asleep, these guys will start talking like military guys would. I mean, they're talking about poker games and, you know, oh, I can believe that. And the terminology they're using is all from this other universe, and it's so funny. It was so funny. And then there are correlations that they make. They kind of know the language that Kricket's using, but kind of don't. And so there are comments that they make about what is that and how do I do that, and it's so funny. I think at one point she says, you bet your ass we're going to do that. And then they say, well, what's an ass and how do, you know, what's it worth in terms of a wager? It's so funny. So I loved that. I loved the side characters who are hilarious. I really like the love interest because he's so no nonsense and like, you know, look, you know, we're going to get it done. That's it. You know, quit whining. Really, really enjoyed this one. I'm looking forward to the sequel, which comes out at the end of this month. And yeah, I was a total surprise. I gave it 4.5 stars. Lies Beneath by Anne Brown Greenwood. This was narrated on audio by MacLeod Andrews, and it is why I picked up the book. It's about mermaids, and it's told from the perspective of a guy who is a mermaid. Well, not a mermaid, but a merman, but he's part of a family, and they have a vendetta, and it's almost like a mafia family. Kind of, it has that vibe. It's not a mafia family, but it has that vibe to it. And he, he's in a dilemma, moral dilemma about whether or not to kill this guy. There's a lot of mermaid culture in it, but these mermaids are evil, evil people. They will drag you to the bottom of the water and suck the positive energy out of you. It's a great story. It's very dark. So if you like that kind of thing, you'll love that. And I gave that one 4 stars. Vanishing Girl, this is by Laura Thalassa, and Kate Rudd narrated it on audio as Rachel Vivette. The Vanishing Girl is about a girl who can teleport for 10 minutes at a time at night when she goes to sleep. And so whatever trouble she gets into, she at least knows she's only got 10 minutes. So this is new adult romance, believe it or not. It's not YA, although the characters are, I think, 18, 19 years old. And basically the government gets a hold of her and puts her in a camp for people like her, and they're being used as spies, espionage, all that, kind of thing. And, she's got to either run away with the guy that she falls for or overthrow the whole thing. It's that kind of thing. Pretty entertaining. I think it was about average as those sorts of books go, and I gave it 3 stars. Fire and Flood by Victoria Scott. I read this as an ebook because it's not available on audio. And this book has gotten a fair amount of hype, and the sequel, Salt and Stone, has just come out. It's a pretty good story. It's been compared a lot to The Hunger Games, and I think no, that's probably not a fair comparison because it's a completely different book. I mean, it unfolds a completely different way, and the only similarity really is the fact that it is a survival kind of thing. The difference is that you get some kind of like a pet to go along with you, and I forget what they're called, but you never really get that Hunger Games feel. I wasn't overly thrilled with this one. I think it was about average. I think it's that the main character is supposed to be kind of cocky and snarky, and she never really pulls that off. She tends to just sound like she's trying too hard to be funny. So, that kind of took away some of the appeal. But I think overall, this is definitely a series worth reading, and I'm going to continue on with it. So I gave that one 3 stars. Parallel by Claudia LeFeve. This was narrated on audio by Sienna Beckman. And this was a book I got for free and then picked up the Whisper Sing for something like $1.99. Great premise. I'm kind of into the parallel worlds thing right now. And this is about an orphan. She meets a guy who slides her into a parallel universe where things are turned around and she's thrown in and just immediately has to cope. It's not very believable. And it quickly descends into high school drama. And I didn't see the point, and I just pretty much DNF'd it at about 20%. The narration was okay, but it was nothing to write home about. So, yeah, didn't much care for that one. 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This is narrated on audio by Tavia Gilbert. And I like her as a narrator pretty well. This is about the 3rd or 4th book that I think I've heard her narrate, and I've been pleased with all of them. Again, continuing with the parallel worlds, this is the story of a girl whose dad has just died, and she is on a mission to capture his killer. He was a physics professor, as was her mother, and her mother created this device that enables her and others to go between parallel worlds. Some of that science didn't make any sense to me, and I don't like it when that happens. It's like when an author sets rules for any kind of travel, whether it's time travel, between worlds travel, space travel. When they set rules, they need to abide by those rules, and when they break them, then it doesn't tend to make sense. And they did kind of that in this case. In one of the worlds that our main character goes to, it's Russia, and she's a princess. She kind of gets stuck, and at one point I wondered why she wasn't working any harder to accomplish her mission, as it were. And I didn't like that. I thought she could have worked a little harder to do that and gotten a little further. That said, it's a fairly engrossing plot, so I will be continuing with the series. I think it may be one of those that just gets better and better. It's a pretty intricate plot, and it's very enjoyable, and I really liked it, and I gave it 4 stars. Invaded by Melissa Landers. This was narrated on audio by Madeleine Lambert. This is the sequel to Alienated, and this is just a duology, although at the end of Invaded, Melissa Landers did leave an opening to write a 3rd book if the publisher wants it. I think the deal was just for 2 books, and then kind of we'll see how this sells kind of thing. This is a story of Alex and Kara. Alex is from a different planet, and Kara is from the Earth, and they are high school students in an exchange program. And at the end of the 1st book, Kara is required to go to Alex's planet, and he's required to stay on Earth for kind of the school term. And we spend most of our time with Kara on Lair and her adapting to life there. It is told from 2 perspectives, so you do get Alex's point of view here. The adventure is great. I really enjoyed this. I think it's funny. I think it's intriguing. I think there's a lot of political maneuvering going on. There's a good bad guy. And it's in space. There's a lot of fun science in it. So I gave this one 4.5 stars. And lastly, my 2 5-star reads were Firefight by Brandon Sanderson, narrated on audio by MacLeod Andrews. This is the sequel to Steelheart. It's book 2 in the Reckoner series. Love this story. I love this whole world of epics who are people who have been affected by something called the calamity in the sky, which is like a star that kind of came and exploded and gave people superpowers, but then those superpowers also corrupt them. So they're bad villains, and they take over towns in the world, and they do bad stuff and kill people and all that kind of thing. And David is this guy who is kind of a geeky nerd who his dad was killed by the epic Steelheart. Every epic has a weakness, and so David has made it his mission in life to gather all the information about all the epics and find their weaknesses and a way to defeat them. Well, in this book, David is much more self-assured, even though he's still kind of, the confidence level is not really high with him. He tends to be a little impulsive, but not in a bad way. I mean, he will catch himself and think, oh, I was such an idiot to do that. Why did I think that was going to work? And at the same time, he's very innovative. He's smart in the way that he figures out how to do stuff. He's a little bit bumbling, but he gets better. He's just so endearing. I absolutely love that character, and I love this series. I think this book was even better than Steelheart. The world building was already in place, and so this dealt a lot with the characters of the epics and how they got to be epics and what kind of an influence these superpowers have on their character. I can't wait for the 3rd book in this series. I absolutely loved it, and like I said, 5 stars. And my other 5-star read was The Ace of Skulls by Chris Wooding, which is the 4th book in the Ketty J series. Conclusion to the series, that's 4 books, and you know, you've heard me rattle on and on and on and on and on endlessly about the Ketty J series, so I will just tell you that this was spectacular. Wonderful end, concluded everything really nicely. Couldn't have done it better. The only better thing about this series would be a collaboration between Chris Wooding and Joss Whedon. So that was all the sci-fi, fantasy, paranormal, you know, whatever kind of stuff that I read this month. If you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts. You know, I love talking with you in comments about what you thought. And if you have any thoughts, recommendations, opinions, anything, I love to hear those. And that's it for now for me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
You're gonna miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me by my walk. You're gonna miss me by my talk. Oh, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone.